Hi, it's Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO here in beautiful Montreal, welcoming you to another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. We're part of Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional community, and you can find us on Facebook. We bring you conversations about everything fractional that matters for fractional executives and businesses from coast to coast. Think of this as your go-to spot for real talk, practical wisdom, and strategies you can actually use, all without the corporate fluff and with plenty of Canadian content. Whether you're a fractional pro or a business in our great country of Canada and beyond, this conversation is for you. Grab your espresso and let's dive in. Welcome to the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. I'm your host and Fractional CMO, Robert Mendelson, usually in beautiful Montreal, today somewhere in Toronto on the road. And joining us from literally just down the street in Toronto is Andrew Jenkins. Andrew helps global enterprises navigate the complex, always-on world of digital strategy. He's the author of the book Social Media Marketing for Business, also a university instructor at University of Toronto, where he teaches the next generation of leaders how to sell digital strategy to the C-suite. And Andrew is also a frequent speaker on stages like Digimarcon, on hot topics like generative AI and content marketing. Today's Fractional Pros Wow, I'm really mixing up my words today. Let's try again. Today's Fractional Pros Canada podcast, powered by Fractional Pros Canada, the home for Canada's fractional executive community. You can join us in our Facebook group. Just search for Fractional Pros Canada on Facebook. You can also find Fractional Pros Canada on LinkedIn. Andrew, welcome to the pod. And while you're saying hello, Andrew, I'm going to take another swig of this big coffee here, which clearly I've not had enough of yet.
Well, at least you're proving to people that you're not. It's not an AI avatar.
That's right. Maybe I should do this on purpose every episode. Some mistakes so people understand this is truly human, authentic content.
Well, so thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
All right. Well, wait, I missed my chance to take another swig of the coffee.
Okay. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi.
All right. All right. So, Andrew, got to start with a great, story, little line that you put in your bio, because it really shows how long you've been in the trenches. So you say, My first tweet had a typo. My second tweet was an apology for the typo in my first tweet.
Yes. Back to 2008. And then some friend saw that and said, just relax. And it's the same advice we give to clients and other people who ask about social media is just, be yourself, be authentic. And don't overthink it. Yes, you want to make sure that you're protective of your personal brand, your corporate brand, and so on. But it's about social media being social, and there's an element of humanity to it. And so if you come across as too stuffy, too corporate, it's just not going to work.
And so this is kind of like the overarching topic, I think, of everything we're going to talk about today. So you look at where we are now versus where we were then, and now, you got the AI bots, algorithms, video. Do you feel the golden age of social is over, or are we just finally getting down to business here?
It's not that it's over. I think it's just continuing to evolve. I loved Twitter in the early days. It has had its ups and downs. The recent revelations show how many bots from other countries are having an impact on the political dialogue. So that's just one example. LinkedIn, I was in the first 200,000 users 20 plus years ago. It's now, in the billions in terms of members, not so much in daily users, but again, it continues to evolve. When what got me started in social media was being hired to do research on all the predominant social networks at the time in 2008. And do you know what the number one social platform was in 2008?
Were those Squarespace days?
That was MySpace.
Yeah. MySpace, yeah, MySpace. Yeah.
And it's gone. Yeah. So again, it's just another sign of the evolution. TikTok, is now probably 6 years old. It dominates, and the content on TikTok inspires and influences memes and content on other platforms. I mean, the joke is what was on TikTok today will be on Reels on Instagram 2 weeks from now. So
That's right.
anyway, all that to say, it's ever evolving. I still love it. The way people are consuming content, the way people are getting their news, it's even more through social than ever before. Podcasts have more viewers and listeners than some shows on traditional news channels. So it's a new reality for many.
Now, you've been doing the conference circuit a little bit, and one of the popular topics that you speak on is generative AI content creation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is always, it seems to be an ongoing debate, right? Everyone's using their favorite ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, whatever, to help, if not completely write their LinkedIn posts, their social media posts. And the big question is that okay? What is the right way to use these tools efficiently without losing our humanity? What's the best practice right now from where you're sitting?
The advice I tend to give is distinguishing between automation and autopilot. AI and generative AI, et cetera, can be very, very helpful for ideation, content creation, and automating. In this case, I'll call it scheduling or planning or both. Autopilot is when you totally relinquish control to, I press a button, it goes off and makes content and schedules it, and I never touched it, never saw it, never edited it. That's when you might run into some potential problems. My company, do we use AI? Yes, every day. Research, brainstorming, ideation, planning, and a variety of things, but we don't allow it to author anything original. So if we use it I'll use a blog as an example. We'll use AI to help with research for a blog. A human still writes that blog. A human may use AI to explore counter arguments, different tangents that the topics and themes can follow, but a human still writes it, and a human still edits it before it goes live or before it's published. We always, as a human, intervene before anything because we're responsible for the content and the brands of our clients. And so nothing goes out that hasn't been approved and reviewed.
So am I hearing you're using AI to help generate the ideas, but you're not letting it write any of the content at all? All 100% of the content is actually written by humans?
So we may, like I said, explore ideas around a blog, and it may say, okay, here's some angles that you can explore. And I have my own podcast. I use a thing called My Showrunner that'll help me come up with questions. But I'll give myshowrunner.com a PDF of a LinkedIn profile of my guest. And it'll suggest angles for the discussion. But I already have an agenda in my mind as well. So it's kind of just the brainstorming. And I may look at the questions and go, yeah, I'll use that. But I use them as a guide. And I tell my guests, as an example, that this is just meant to give you a sense of the direction of the conversation. And the same thing with a blog. It could be, here's 5 different like at a high level. We worked with an M&A firm, and they talked about mergers and acquisitions. But if I got more layman's terms and said buying a business, selling a business, well, suddenly there were these tangents that I could explore with preparing for due diligence, negotiation, what it's like to live through the earnout phase. And so suddenly the overarching umbrella might be this main topic or theme, but AI can help me explore different branches. But I call it gives you a skeleton, and then you go put meat on the bone by finishing off with your own writing.
Yeah, it's using AI as a thought partner. I'm hearing that more and more. People talking about how they figured out the best way to live, to coexist with AI.
Yeah, because if you let it write, it's like suddenly it's saying, delve and befell, and so I'm like, that doesn't sound like you.
Right.
But I've used it, for example.
Well, another one of my favorites.
Which one?
Throws in robust.
Oh, well, so I've given chapters of my book to AI tools to come up with course structures course modules, blog ideas, but the source material I wrote. So we're using it for derivative content too. And I just use that as an example.
You also talk about the war for attention, and organic reach is pretty much on its way out. It's still there, but it's the trending down. It's trending down. It's dropping on just about every platform. Is the playbook still content is king, or do we need to start shifting our strategy to something else that, is actually going to make us stand out from the crowd more?
I still firmly believe good content will be found, but good content produced consistently. If you're going to post on Twitter once every other month, as an example, or post once every other month on LinkedIn, same thing, you'll be invisible. We advise clients, if you're starting a Facebook page today, you better have a paid budget set aside. It will not get off the ground without paid support. But in the case of LinkedIn, we tell clients a company page is a free digital outlet for you. Use it. But if you really want to be successful on LinkedIn, it's going to be a combination of your company page and a few key people from your company that can amplify what you're doing and also talk independently, but still on company-related matters. No disrespect to the company, but 10 employees will have cumulatively have a much bigger network than the followers of the page. My company page has hundreds of followers, which is great, but I have thousands. And that's not a flex or a brag. That's just the reality of being on the platform for 20 years. And so a post from me versus a post from my company page is going to perform quite differently.
I've had clients where the situation is very similar to that. The company page is doing okay, but the leaders, the C-suite, maybe the founder of the company, they just don't, there's some blockage. They don't want to post on LinkedIn as themselves. Any tips on how to persuade them that, to tell them they need to is not really the best approach, because then you can't really tell a CEO or founder what to do. How do you approach that to get them to see that this is actually a valuable and can also be a fun activity? It doesn't have to be done every day.
Right. Well, so many of those leaders make decisions based on data. So we provide them data. And right now we're going through a very similar process. We just finished a 2026 content plan for a client. And one of the main overarching themes is thought leadership, not just as a company, but for some members of their leadership team and subject matter experts within the firm. And we've done some personal brand audits of some of the members of the leadership team. And we're going to have to soften the language because it's not that we're being mean-spirited. It's the fact that some of their personal brands are nearly non-existent. And then if you ask them, so if you were to think about who you follow and whose content you consume, and we'll just use LinkedIn in this instance, and we show them, like, obviously you're paying attention to them, and you're inspired / influenced by them. I'm not saying you have to replicate them, but if you even just moving the needle a little bit by posting even once a week compared to nothing would have some implications. So again, we're going to show them what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, and where they have an opportunity to improve and the benefits therein. But again, it's not just an opinion. It's going to be backed up by data.
Yeah, data is always the best way, of course, to make decisions and to build a business case and go to the executive and say, you may not like doing this, but the data shows you should be doing this.
We're going to have some data tough love. And the thing is, it's not meant to be, like, as I said, harsh or mean-spirited. It is a reality. And the one, no, I shouldn't say one, the one benefit, but one of the many benefits of social media is the data that can be derived from it. And there's no shortage of it. And you have to be careful that you don't overwhelm your stakeholders and your clients, et cetera, but give them the so what of the data. What's the actionable insight?
Go back to Twitter. You've mentioned Twitter a lot. You're obviously active on Twitter. I set up a Twitter account pretty early days when it came out, and I never really used it. I was never really active on it. I believe the stats are that it's what is it, less than 20% or something like most people are not on Twitter, right? Of the general public, and even in the business community, I don't know how big a reach it actually has.
Yeah.
I'm never on Twitter. How important is Twitter in the business mix of things these days?
Well, so if we have a new client and they're not on X, formerly Twitter, we're not putting them on it because it is hard to build from scratch. Having said that, it is the most open platform. So it is used as a proxy from a social media listening point of view to give even I'll call it a random sampling of sentiment, the overarching dialogue, etc. And every time people say, oh, Twitter's over, Twitter's dead, etc., something happens in the news, in the media, and it continues to illustrate its necessity, that it is a utility. Part of me wishes it had been sort of not privatized, but been deemed to be a utility like energy, because it was so important for dissemination of news in so many instances over the years. But it's now there's a lot of hate, there's a lot of misinformation, bots, etc. Still within that, there is viable content. So if we have clients that are on it, we continue to use it. If you're not on it or not established on it, then you'd be hard pressed to make a go of it, unless you're like, the shelf life of a tweet is really, really short. So I'm trying to think how many years ago, as an experiment, I think I had like 2,500 followers. I started posting 20 times a day.
Wow.
With curated third-party content and a mixture of my own. And no, it was about 1,200 followers. And so over a year, I doubled that. And then the next year, I upped that to 40.
40 times a day.
Yes. And then half the time, so 1 year to double from 1,200 to about 2,700. And then in 6 months, I went from 2,700 to 6,000 or 5,000. And so I was playing into the system, the algorithm, and no matter the platform, content is the beast that must be fed. And so it speaks to the consistency. Now, Twitter is a unique animal. It can handle that volume, and I wouldn't look like a spammer. If I was posting 40 times a day on LinkedIn, my network would run away.
Right.
The LinkedIn algorithm, the overarching speculation is post once a day and no more frequently than maybe 18 hours between posts. I'm going to play around, I think, in 2026 with trying 2 posts a day, at least maybe on a few days. And again, watching the data. But that's, with respect to Twitter, that was my experience. There was a lot more. My digital network in the Toronto area and globally exploded because of Twitter. It was like, I don't want to say it was where the cool kids were hanging out, because I didn't consider myself to be a cool kid. But it exploded out of South by Southwest in 2007. I joined in 2008, and it was a good place to be for about 5, 6, 7 years, and then Instagram came along and people converted to there. Then TikTok came, and I don't know what's next.
Nobody knows what's next. That's the fun part of all this. So you've worked with many clients in, let's call them less glamorous industries, with no offense and all respect. Industries like finance or mining. I mean, these are not, the sexy industries, so to speak. Although I'm sure arguments can be made.
If you ask people in those industries, they'd have a different opinion.
Right. And I'm sure they are, because, I mean, depending on if you're mining, I don't know, diamonds, like that's pretty interesting, right? You're mining oil, that's interesting. So yeah, absolutely. I could see that. But that being said, they're not the same as, what we think of as viral industries, like maybe fashion, right? Or tech, anything tech related. So if I've got a client in that B2B space and they're not doing much social media and they're like, wow, no one's interested in our industry. It's too boring. What kind of content strategy should they be looking at that's going to drive engagement for those kinds of more serious technical businesses?
Well, we do a bit of an audit on across the different channels to see are there conversations happening that are relevant to the prospective client. What are those conversations about? Good, bad, or indifferent? And what kind of content and in what format are is being distributed there? And I'll use the mining as an example. So we were just talking about Twitter. In the mining industry, Twitter is an integral platform, and the reason being is a lot of people are sending out news or press releases about their publicly traded mining company. Their investor relations people are pushing out on Twitter. And there's also a thing called a cash tag, not a hashtag, but a cash tag. And that's the dollar symbol plus the stock symbol following it. So people have monitors set up on their on Twitter just tracking those cash tags. So they're tracking news about the particular mining companies that they're following and may have invested in. And so it's that kind of ticker tape, like the old stock ticker tape from days of old.
Ticker tape parades.
Yeah, and I'm really aging myself here to be able to say that I know what that is. Maybe those who've seen the Hudsucker proxy. Anyway, but that idea of still being a valuable platform for the dissemination of news. And that's just one example for mining. But whether it's financial services, mining, I mean, our longest standing client sells high-end pumps to water management companies and to chemical plants. But the CEO of the company said, I don't want to be like the lazy laggard other members of my industry who aren't doing anything in this space. And we've been writing 2 blogs a month, plus managing their social channels for, like 7 years. And they put a stake in the ground. And so they're being a thought leader. They're standing out. They're differentiating themselves. But that's a bold move. Not everyone's willing to do that. And, some industries, people don't like bold moves, but they can be rewarded for doing so.
Now, some CEOs in those kinds of industries are going to listen to that and they're going to say, okay, I hear you. It can help set me apart. But at the end of the day, how do I measure if it's really moving the needle?
Sure. So I refer to it as the 3 C's of social ROI. The first C is community. Did we grow your community over time? The second C is content. Did we improve the performance of your content? Did we, the first area of impact that people see from us is the consistency that we create for them in terms of content creation and distribution. And then the third C is conversion. And that can manifest itself in increased referral traffic from social to your website. Did we send people to sign up for your webinar? Did we send people to sign up for your newsletter? Did we send them to the contact form? Did we send them to download a white paper or an ebook? And it's that closing of the loop. We're not here for the likes. We're not here for the followers, although they pay a dividend. We're here to drive a business outcome using social. And direct and organic search from Google will always outperform social. But did we increase the slice of the referral traffic pie that was social? And like I said, people are consuming content in a different way. Now you have SEO search and AEO search. So the more content that you have out there on a consistent basis, can you earn some media? So we're listed on a website called Clutch. We've got reviews there. We have a high ranking. Those reviews are driving our discoverability in AEO. And so you're having to spin up this flywheel and keep it spinning, and social plays a role in that.
Let's talk about social selling. And I know you've trained teams at companies like CIBC, Microsoft, BMO. A lot of people think social selling is just send out DMs in LinkedIn to people like, hey, I've got this awesome thing. I'm sure you're interested because I'm really excited about it. When can we talk? Right.
Yeah. I'm awesome. Please reply so I can show you how awesome.
Right. And then you just wait and you just watch people completely ignore you and not respond to you at all.
Yeah, it's when we were talking earlier about automation, people are now many are of the mind now that if I automate my LinkedIn outreach, that's social selling. And my inbox is filled with automated DMs from people that have either hired a service or they're selling the same service that they want me to hire them for their automation service. Now, for anyone who checks out my LinkedIn profile, they'll see a Canadian flag in front of my name, and it's there for a reason. It is there to trip up the automated bots, because the automated bots can't handle an emoji or special characters in your name. So when I get a message in my DMs and the Canadian flag is still there, or there's some gibberish like some mixture of question marks and whatever, I know they used an automated tool. And if they're trying to be automated in their authenticness or in their authenticity.
Authenticity was the word.
Yeah, once you can fake sincerity, you've got it made, as they say. And there was one instance where, and I've written about this on LinkedIn, I received 2 different messages from 2 different people from the same company. One was the CEO, one was from marketing, at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night. And I took a screenshot of the messages that were 95% identical, and they were like one after the other in my inbox. And I sent it to the CEO and I said, whatever service you're using, you should stop, because this is what's happening on the other side if your brand is something you want to protect. And he replied, he was grateful. He says, someone on the team thought this was a good idea. We have shut it off. And I mean, every week I'm getting an example of that. So I'm going to get off my pulpit, but you can't fake being human, authentic, and you're better off talking to 2 people in an authentic way and manually than automating outreach to 100 people that you make 98 of them angry with you, but you got those 2 people to open your message and reply. So it's more about build a strong personal brand founded on good content, not content that's promotional, content that informs, educates, and helps. Earn the right to have a conversation with people. And infuse it with some humanity. I like to periodically just break away and put in some humorous stuff. Like I posted an AI image on Monday. There was an image sort of derived from one of my own of me on a rocket sled talking about going into work on a Monday. High engagement. And so it's bringing visibility to me, bringing visibility to my content, and it's a break from, hey, buy my stuff, hey, aren't we great? You earn the right to periodically say that. Like we talk about the awards we've received and client wins and whatever. That's the nature of that environment. But mix it up a little. And like I said, earn the right to have a dialogue with people.
And so this is the first time I've heard the use of the Canadian flag as a spam filter. And I have to check the Constitution on
Go
that.
Canada.
You have to see if that's actually permitted, or is that up there with burning the flag when we're using it for the wrong purpose? I'm not sure. We'll check in with our legal team.
Well, yeah, I've seen people, like another podcast host put the emoji for the old style radio microphone. He's got it in between his first and last name. Some people put special characters between their first and last name. Whatever you want to do is, and I'll see, dear Canadian flag. Okay. And I wrote a post about this. LinkedIn sent me an automated message. And they said, Dear M. They got my name wrong. That was LinkedIn.
Wow.
So this is where there's automation and autopilot. And autopilot is when things really get messed up and make you look stupid.
Let's dig into automation. Let's double click on that for a sec. LinkedIn specifically says they have a policy against using any kind of automation tools with LinkedIn. It's against their policies. You could get penalized, you lose your account, whatever. Have you seen any evidence of that? Is that just scare tactics? Does it actually happen? And do you know where that red line is that you really can get close to without any kind of consequences?
Well, so I'll qualify that. So things like third-party approved scheduling tools like Sprout Social, Hootsuite, Buffer, LinkedIn allows that, and they are operating with the proper terms of use as it relates to LinkedIn's API. And we have an analytics solution that we use, again, that uses the access to the LinkedIn API properly and according to the terms of use. Where you get into the automation issue where you run the risk of your account being banned is when you're automating likes, automating comments, automating outreach. Because that's where there tends to be some spamming. They're also looking at scraping. There's been like Apollo, it's a big sales enablement or sales tool. Well, they got banned from LinkedIn because of the data scraping and things like that. You have to look into it for more details as to exactly why. So, in order to, we're all busy people. In order to manage your own use of LinkedIn, you might want to schedule a post. And LinkedIn enables you to schedule one at a time. Well, we use Buffer, so we can drag and drop posts from different channels. So there's a little more finesse to it. So scheduling, I don't take issue with, and neither does the platform. Automated fakery, DMs and comments and that kind of stuff, and the outreach, or faking profile views, that kind of stuff, that's against the terms of use. And posing as people. So you're seeing a number of services out there that ghost as CEOs. I'm not here. I don't want to sound like I'm judging them, but
slap them on the wrist. Go for it.
It's not me. It's like, I hope your clients understand that what you're doing is putting their profiles at risk, and that they understand when they sign up for it that they're doing so at their own risk, and that you are not going to be liable. Have we used scheduling solutions to post on behalf of some senior leaders within our clients? Yes, that's scheduling a post. That's not the same as logging in as them onto the platform so that we can see their DMs and act as them. No, won't do that. I don't like the exposure to that. We're better off, doing content planning and giving, pre-built posts, potentially to the CEO or members of the leadership team saying, here's your content for the month, schedule as you see fit. If they want to give it to their admin, they can do that too.
Right. And is that an acceptable option for LinkedIn to have your admin maybe send out if they want to do some messaging?
I haven't seen it confirmed, but I've heard that if your admin is in the same city, sort of like similar IP address, they sort of turn a blind eye to that because they recognize that, I'm sure the CEO of LinkedIn might have their admin doing some stuff for them. Just speculating. But that's not the same as, I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines that, in a completely different country on a different time zone, that is suddenly, I don't think that the CEO of company X lives in the Philippines and they're posting. So I don't know. That might be a red flag.
Yeah. I mean, I say to myself, what's wrong with that? A lot of companies, a lot of CEOs have virtual assistants overseas these days. It's very common practice. And where's the what are you doing wrong? Where are you crossing the line? If you're asking them to post on your behalf, it's authentic. It's not automated. It's real stuff. It's a real person doing it.
Well, I'm not here to kill the vibe. I mean, by all means, check out LinkedIn's terms of use. And if they say you can use a virtual assistant in another country, have at it. But if you read the terms of use, your LinkedIn profile is owned by you and LinkedIn, and not your employer, and not a virtual assistant in another country. So do so at your own risk.
Which in itself, you talk about that, and the risk is that it is owned by LinkedIn, and LinkedIn at the end of the day can do whatever they want.
Yep.
With your
You're
profile,
just a tenant
to your profile.
Well, this was a conversation that I saw on LinkedIn just the other day. Like, they are pushing people into paid. They keep crippling the functionality of the free versions. Oh, you can only send out, like, what is it, 3 DMs or whatever. You're limited in the number of connection requests on a daily basis. It's a much smaller quantity for free versus paid. I've been on Sales Navigator since they introduced it. And it's not for everyone. If you're not in a sales role, yeah, it's hard to justify paying, but it's integral to my business. And the other thing is, people ask, is it worth paying for? And I just say, the more you pay, the more functions you get access to, and the more productive you can be, and the more information you get access to. So if you can justify, I want more information, I want to be more productive, I want more features and functions because I've hit a wall, then yeah, it might be worth paying for.
So we got a lot of fractionals tuning in today, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of CFOs, fractional CMOs, CTOs, CMOs, etc. If you're auditing a LinkedIn profile of a fractional executive, I guess this really would apply to any executive. Are there common, low-hanging fruit type of things that you see on LinkedIn profiles that can be fixed right away? What are the most common problems, mistakes that we're making with our LinkedIn profiles?
We'll start at the top, the banner. Don't settle for the default banner. Put in a banner either of your employer, or, I've coached some senior leaders and said, I just say, put in a banner that reflects some of your values, your thoughts, what you stand for in a corporate context, whatever it might be. Like if you're about leadership, if you're about diversity, if you want to put some imagery there. Again, this is, you mentioned earlier about the war for attention.
Yeah.
If people are coming by your profile, you want it to stand out. And then if we move down to your headline, same thing, you want to stand out. When you leave a comment, that's a digital, it's a digital breadcrumb.
It's a new word, Bridgetal.
Yeah, Bridgetal. I'm in Bridgetal marketing. And so you want your headline to be provocative, because when you leave a comment, that's the only thing beside the thumbnail of your headshot that people see on a comment. So saying director of marketing or fractional CFO, okay, there are a few other fractional CFOs in this world. But if you fractional CFO dash blah, 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 and whatever that blah, blah, blah is stands out. So think about in your headline what you do, who you help, and how you help them. And you can still include the title, whatever you want. But again, this is about hooking people, getting their attention. A friend of mine in the UK who's a social selling thought leader, his headline says, should have played Quidditch for England. Like a Harry Potter reference. No job title, nothing. But does it stand out? Absolutely.
Attention getting.
Yeah. So banner, headline, make sure your contact information is populated. If you want to give a generic Gmail address, if you're in the business of getting hired, don't put any obstacles or hurdles in the way of people that might want to reach out to you. And the last thing is your about section. LinkedIn only displays the first 2-3 sentences. What can you say in those first 2 to 3 sentences that will hook people and make them click see more?
Right.
And yeah, the last thing on the experience section. So if you're a fractional CMO or fractional CFO, talk about some client engagements, not just the things that you did, but the impact you had. and then there's the featured content section. So some media in there, video, like this podcast episode will likely be on your LinkedIn profile in the featured section, maybe for a week or whatever, and then it'll get replaced with a new piece of media. But you've got that carousel of content.
All right, good tips, good tips. We talked about this a little bit before, of having employees do some posting, but we need to put guardrails around that often, or else everybody goes off in their own direction. So what are the kind of, basic mistakes that you see teams with really good intentions doing, and what's the right way to reel them in?
Well, so Dell had a thing called Smack You, Social Media University, and they had 3 tiers of training. They trained people on social media so they were familiar with the impact, the implications of social. It wasn't, these were like, they wanted everyone trained on it such that they were familiar. Then there was people that were trained on it that were in customer service, that were client facing or like external facing, that might have to have a dialogue with people through social. Then there was the third and final and upper tier was people that were using social that were also media representatives of the company. And I think that's a good way to sort of break it down, is like, where does social touch these employees? Is it part of their role? If not, they still want to make sure that they're familiar, that whether they like it or not, what they say and do in social may have an implication for the company and their own status as employee. This is just the reality of the world we're in now. But also take an approach of empowerment rather than social media policy. Sounds kind of draconian. Social media guidelines is a little more empowering. Take the approach of, if you're going to do this, we encourage you to do it in the following way, versus thou shalt not say this, thou shalt not do that, etc. Encourage people, train people on what best practices are, what to be mindful of. The joke is, don't say or do anything in social you wouldn't want read out in court. That kind of thing. But I tend to err on the side of being positive, empowering. Even before social, if you've done a really good job of building a vibrant corporate culture, you'll be surprised if people are happy at work, that happiness or their joy that they have in working there spills over into social on the odd occasion. So, there's something more foundational than just the social part. If people hate going to work, they're not going to love the, can you tweet about your day?
Probably don't want them posting anything.
And I think some leaders might know the kind of core culture they've created.
Yeah. And that's a tough one, though. If you do have an employee who's disgruntled, or maybe something just happened and they're temporarily disgruntled, and they start posting and they're still kind of following the guidelines, but they're wording it now in a way, it's almost like a passive aggressive, where you kind of read it and you read into it like, oh, doesn't sound like they're too happy or something. That's a tough one to control, right?
Well, there's a risk there. So that's why you want to make sure that there is a social media, there's a document about the company's stance about social and what's, like I said, you want to be empowering, but ultimately there's got to be a few things in there that says, hate, some objectionable content will not be tolerated. It's no different than, setting community rules on your Facebook page about what commentary is acceptable, etc. And so that if you can point to say, like, you said this, and if you recall, the guidelines that you signed off on meant that you understood what you could and couldn't do. And so you want to make sure that people are well informed, and there is always that risk that someone's going to say or do something in social that will have an implication towards the company brand, but also to themselves. And you want to make sure that there's an escalation path on how to deal with it, and so that you can take the discussion offline and talk it through. And is it something that gets a warning? Is it something that could cause a termination? Hopefully not. Hopefully it's something that that you can just have deleted and we can move on with our day. But I've seen too many situations, whether it's a consumer or it's an employee, that makes a misstep in social, and then people have to deal with it.
I'm trying to remember if it was Warren Buffett or Charlie's partner who they were asked once, how do you make sure your managers are doing the right thing, and how do you manage so many managers because you have so many companies in your portfolio? And the answer was something along the lines of that they tell their managers that if you're coming to me with a question about should I do X, ask yourself the question, if you did X and it was published in the papers tomorrow, would you still be okay with that? And that should be your answer. All right. And he's like, basically managers don't come to me with anything anymore because that litmus test pretty much takes care of most of those decisions that a manager is not sure about. They don't want to have that published in the papers tomorrow and anybody reading about it, they know what the answer is.
Well, I remember being in a meeting with a client. I was only for a speaking engagement. We weren't engaged to help them with their social. And they were talking as a group about a fellow employee whose Facebook profile was open. It wasn't locked down. And this employee was publishing content that was controversial in the context of the kind of a company they worked for. And there was this employee could do on Facebook. I mean, that was her own personal account, but the fact that it was wide open meant there was a potential spillover. And the other problem was there was no corporate social media policy. And so they had a dilemma. And this is just an example of where companies need to be comprehensive, thoughtful, and thorough when it comes to social, empower, but also to protect their own employees from missteps. So this employee is going to be embarrassed. They're going to get anxious, and they're like, what are the implications of whatever I posted? What I posted is part of my values, my beliefs, whatever, which is their right. But when juxtaposed with their employer, becomes problematic. We had a situation years ago on an engagement with a pet food company, a client. Not an employee, but a consumer, posted on their Facebook page, your pet food killed my dog. And fire alarm, like it was, everyone was like, oh my God. And it was like, time out. Who is this person? Some people want to go onto social and just scream into the void. I'm not diminishing the fact that they were mourning the loss of their pet, but there's going through this triaging process. What was said, who's saying it, what are the potential implications, are they influential, etc. And one of my favorite lines was from an executive from the Four Seasons Hotel during a presentation who said, when you have an irate customer in the lobby of your hotel, your first priority is to get them out of the lobby. And so if you can move the conversation offline, and you see this with customer service examples all the time, someone will be like calling up a telecom or a bank saying, I'm so frustrated. Like I've been waiting an hour on the 1-800 whatever. And then social intervenes, moves them offline, gets someone to address them. They come back to social to thank you, to praise you for, not in every case, but in a lot often. And so, they had to go through the ugly part, and the brand had to suffer through that too. But then they have this now, unexpected testimonial. And so back to the pet food example, I said to the CEO, wait it out. It's just going to get pushed down in the feed. But you don't have to acknowledge guilt or responsibility, but make sure that this person knows that you heard them and that you're prepared to discuss the matter. So respond saying, we understand you have an issue. We're here to discuss it with you. Here's the toll-free number. We await your call. And the person never called. But publicly, they showed that they responded to the issue, that they weren't hiding, they weren't running away from it, etc. And so that for any person that came by, they were prepared to deal with it. And then eventually, like I said, it just sort of gets pushed down in the feed and it sort of dissipates. But if you don't respond in that sort of triaging way, you can actually be putting gasoline on the fire yourself, which is not what you want to do. Like if you ignore it, and then it just makes them even angrier, that they might just keep coming back for more.
Turn lemons into lemonade.
Yes.
All right, Andrew, let's wrap this up with the final question. If you could put one message on the billboard of life that business owners and fractionals are driving by every single day and seeing it, what would you put on that message? What would that message be on the billboard?
With specific to social media, just be consistent and authentic with your content.
Be consistent and authentic with your content. All right. Good words to end on. Thank you so much for joining us here, Andrew, on the Fractional Pros Canada podcast.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on another episode of the Fractional Pros Canada podcast. If you're a fractional professional based in Canada, we'd love to have you join us in the Fractional Pros Canada Facebook group, the home for Canada's fractional community. It's where Canadian fractional executives connect, share insights, and help each other succeed. Until next time, I'm Robert Mendelson, Fractional CMO. May your impact be full-time, even if your hours are fractional.